This is Living History Footnotes. These are going to be bonus videos that appear between the main Living History episodes. It offers me a chance to connect with some of you and respond to some comments and share some information that has come my way, and also to tell you a little bit more about the behind the scenes, how the videos got made, and some interesting information that maybe had to get cut from the original script. In today's episode, 𝗏𝗏, who we met in the first episode of Living History, is going to take us on a tour of the Horseshoe Hill crash site. I'm also going to show some interesting historical reading and some photo resources for you to check out what this place once looked like. All that and much more, so let's get into it. If you're new to this channel and want to learn more about what living history is all about, my friend Michael Erskine at the Manitoulin Expositor recently put out a story about this project and what I'm hoping to achieve. I'll link that in the description. Also, my friends and colleagues at CBC Radio here in Northern Ontario did an interview with me on the afternoon show in which I talk a little bit about the project as a whole, but also this story and how I came on the Horseshoe Hill train crash. So I'm not going to get into that today, but I'll include a link for that if you'd like to listen along. First, I want to highlight some excellent historical reading and some old photos of the area from the 1950s on R.L. Kennedy's Old Time Trains website. That was very interesting for me to look at and see how things have changed over time as things have gotten overgrown. And then there's the booklet that I featured quite a lot of in the original video about the 1907 Horseshoe Curve train wreck, and that's by 𝗏𝗏 and James Philby. I've also linked that in the description. As we saw, the area around the crash site has changed so much since the early days of the railway, and it's all overgrown, filled in, leveled out. 𝗏𝗏, who we met in the last video, actually took me on a tour of some of the sites around the area, and I'd like to share some of that bonus footage with you now.
Right down here, through here, don't watch you don't stamp down the crop. And right in this area here would be the apex, would be the start of the apex. This is where the tender fell off. So this right in here is where all the coal and everything we can find when we're digging, or perhaps we're going with a metal detector and pick up stuff, which is actually part of 𝗏𝗏's project. The locomotive skidded from here 350 feet. I would say it would almost be up to that tree there. And this was about 1,000, almost 1,100 feet in diameter, this turn. When the train would go around here, maybe 5 miles an hour, or maybe it would stop, gentlemen would get off and stretch their legs and walk from there to over here and jump back on the train. So the story says. Here are some remnants of coal from when the tender flipped over. This is rail bed here, and it goes through here. So this is the curve. So if you can kind of picture it, it's not over as far as you think it is. It's more or less an arc through here. So this is the railroad bed here. See, I flagged it here with the marker. There'll be a date on here.
So that would have been put in after the crash then, or like replaced after the crash, I presume, if it was 1907. Yeah.
Well, that's the year it went over, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This will be the south side of the curve. I think the railroad bed cut straight through here and kind of followed the arc of that field, and then went into the bush, probably straight ahead. And when I show you those pictures I have, you're going to see a picture of this spot right here. Came through here, started going up. Seems to settle down a little bit right here, so it had to be here. You could see the flatness of it, so you could kind of see the sun glaring off it, but it was pretty pronounced. And the tracks would have came through right about here. Probably right where you see those trees growing. It looks like the deepest right here. I'm sorry again.
There are a couple of stories that I'd like to share with you that I ended up having to cut from the final script. The first one is that there was actually a second passenger train that was meant to follow this one down to Toronto. It was just getting ready to leave Orangeville when the news of this crash happened. They reached the town just in time to stop the train, and they ended up holding the train for a few extra minutes while people ran around the town, rounded up all the doctors they could find, got them onto the train, and then they brought them down to the wreckage to help deal with the injured passengers. The other story that I thought was interesting was there was some controversy that the engineer and potentially the conductor as well may have been out drinking the night before, but in the trial the railway and the workers both testified that they hadn't been drinking in years, and there were also some people that testified that they had seen the crew that morning before they got on their train and that they were sober at the time. I found that conflicting information, and it's not easy to sum all that up in a really concise way, so I ended up leaving that off of the script. One thing that I've been wondering about as I've been doing my research on this story was I've never been able to work out what happened to Hodge and Grimes after this train crash. I did find some notes in a personnel news file from the railway, but it was from a very different location, so I'm wondering if it's just different people that happen to have the same name, or if it was indeed the same people. If anybody does know what happened of Hodge and Grimes or the other people that were involved in the train crew, please let me know and maybe we can close this historical gap. One comment I'd like to highlight comes from user Luke Trust, who said that this story reminded them of the Amagasaki derailment from 2005 in Japan. I had never personally heard of this incident, so I read up on it, and yeah, there do seem to be some parallels between the Horseshoe curve crash and this one from Japan. If you'd like to read more about that, I've linked the story in the description. Something I found interesting is that horseshoe curves are still fairly common on mainline railways across the continent. There's more of them in the States than there are in Canada, but one of the ones that came across in my research was Notch Hill in British Columbia, and my thanks for the permission to use this footage. Near the end of my video I mentioned that the last railway line to Orangeville was getting ripped up in 2022 with plans to turn it into a rail trail. There's a lot of thoughts on the pros and cons of rail trails, and YouTuber Alan Fisher has an interesting video on that I recommend you take a look at if you're interested in learning more. That'll do it for this inaugural edition of Living History Footnotes. Again, thank you so much. We are in the very early stages of this project, but I've already had so much love and support, and it really means the world to me. I hope we can keep this going and growing for many years to come. A huge thanks to all the historians that I referenced, notably Ralph Beaumont, James Philby, and R.L. Kennedy. That work was invaluable in putting this first episode together. I'll invite you to join me back here next week for the next episode of Living History. This time I'll be taking you up Highway 69 in Northern Ontario. Until then, be well.